Welcome to HECTV's live interactive program that's part of St. Louis.
The whole production is pulled together.
It's going to be a steel bridge.
The way the cockpit is designed.
The highest rated green building in the world.
Welcome to HECTV Live. Welcome to HECTV Live, where today we're going to focus on It's Good to Be Green, Reduce, Reuse, and Recover. The video footage you're seeing now, first of all, of course, was a beautiful footage of a stream, and now you're seeing a bunch of product, which hopefully was not in that stream, but is instead being recycled so people can use it in another location later. We're coming to you live today from Flint Park Elementary School in University City, Missouri. We're in the Flint Park Library. And we're here because the Flint Park students are involved in a recycling project of their own. You're going to have the chance to meet with members of the Lions Club here. They'll tell you what Lions is all about and what they do in the project that they're after as we look at ways that we can all increase the greenness, if that's an appropriate word, of our lifestyle. Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Gore, your host for HECTV Live, and I'm very happy to welcome you to today's program. We're going to look at what it means to actually try to be more green, to think about being sustainable, to reduce, reuse, recycle, recover waste, and to use it in a whole variety of different ways and hopefully create less to start with. As always, HECTV Live is interactive. We'll be joined by some video conference schools throughout the program today to ask their questions face-to-face. And of course, if you're joining us via view-only video conference, television, or the internet, you can email us your questions throughout the program to live@hectv.org. That's live@hectv.org. They're going to be texted right to my phone, and I like hearing that little phone text sound throughout the program. We got lots of questions for this morning's program. I look forward to more questions coming in this afternoon. I'll get to our interactive video conference tools in a bit to make sure you're all connected properly, but first, let's meet our guests who are going to join us to talk about what it means to be good to be green. Bill Gunter from the Missouri Recycling Association. Bill, thanks so much for being here. Give the students an idea about who you are and what makes recycling attractive to you.
Thanks, Tim. My name is Bill Gunther, and I am formerly with the Parkway School District, where I operated and managed their recycling program for a number of years. Currently, I'm the Vice President of the Missouri Recycling Association. We provide educational opportunities and promote recycling throughout the state of Missouri, and also keep a watchful eye on legislative activity in the state.
And to his right is Katie Mike Oh, I see. I was so good this morning, Katie Mike Smeistrela from the Earthways Center at Missouri Botanical Garden. Katie Mike, thanks for being here.
Hi, Tim. My name's Katie Mike Smeistrela, and I'm coming to you today from the Missouri Botanical Garden. I work for the Earthways Center, which is the sustainability division of the garden, and that's what we're promoting, sustainability through environmental education and improving the built environment.
Very good, and we're going to talk about sustainability throughout the program. We're also going to have the chance to meet and hear from Gary Gilliam from Resource Management. Gary, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Tim. It's good to be here. I'm a sales manager for Resource Management, which is basically the nuts and bolts of what happens to your material once it's collected at the curb, changing it into a marketable product. And we hope to be able to give a lot of good information regarding that.
It's a big topic, a broad topic, as we think about what it means to be good to be green. And you may have lots of questions. Don't forget you can email them to us at live@hectv.org. We want to start by giving everybody a little idea about the size of the situation that we're dealing with. I looked up some facts from the Clean Air Council, and they tell us, interestingly enough, that the average American office worker uses about 500 disposable cups every year. Every year, Americans throw away enough paper and plastic cups, forks, and spoons to circle the equator 300 times. That every year, Americans use approximately 1 billion shopping bags, creating 300,000 tons of landfill waste, and that less than 1% of plastic bags are recycled each year. The average American uses about the equivalent of one 100-foot Douglas fir tree in paper and wood products each year. Think about the amount of Americans in this country, 250 million, and you know how many Douglas fir trees we're going through. 100-foot Douglas fir trees, which means they've lived a good long period of time. We're going to have the chance to hear from some student groups about information they found on a very localized basis about trash and the waste that was created in their spot. But as we look about this in general, Bill, what should people know about the size and scale and scope of what we're talking about when we talk about the amount of trash or waste that's produced and the amount that recycling can really make a difference?
Well, to give you an example, when I was with Parkway, we're a school district of about 18,000 students and teachers. And just in that school district alone, we were averaging 17,000 to 18,000 tons of cardboard every 2 months. So you take that and go across any school district in the United States, and that'll give you an idea of the amount of material that could be recovered.
And what do you notice, Katie Mike, as you work with people?
Well, I think we could throw a lot of numbers out there for sure, but most interestingly, if you want a picture of the scope of the issue, you should look into your own trash can. Take a look at what it was today that you threw away and what maybe you could have made a different decision on. Perhaps some of those things in that garbage can could have gone into a different bin.
Well, and that's a perfect segue. Gary, we'll talk about it from your end in just a minute, but that's a perfect segue when we talk about trash cans to meet the students from Flint Park Lions Club who've looked into that themselves. So I'll have them stand right up over here, guys, and join me. And I'll put Mr. Christensen on my left, and I'll put the two of you other guys on my right. Hello. Hi. Feel free to talk loud and proud. There's no worry about that. They all handle the microphone sounds in the back room back there, so you can speak as loudly as you want to. Clint, let's talk a little bit about what Lions Club is. When most people hear Lions, I don't know that they would be thinking about kids this age.
Well, yes, the acronym Lions stands for Local Investigations of Natural Science, and Lions is was funded by the National Science Foundation through the Missouri Botanical Garden, and it's a way in an after-school-based program to get kids interested in math and science, so a way to create excitement outside of the normal school day about those subjects.
And Layla, you guys have been working on a project recently, right, to find out about the amount of waste and stuff that's being created in your building. What can you tell us about that project?
Well, basically we just sort out through like.
Did you talk to different people in the building about different kind of who did you talk to and what were you trying to ask them?
We're just trying to ask people around the building how they put away throw away the kinds of stuff like recycling, like milk cartons and paper and
Very good. And did you talk to cafeteria people also?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you're going to talk to the cafeteria people. Now, you guys did a bunch of weighing of trash, right? You sorted some trash. We've got some great pictures that we're going to bring up, and we'll go to these pictures now so the world can see you guys in action in the project, and then we'll talk about what you found out. So let's go to those pictures, which start with number 10, where we can see the students. Okay, so we've got the buckets there. So you guys were going through trash and looking for aluminum cans and metal and all sorts of stuff, right? That's part of what you're after. And Layla, what did you find out about metal stuff and about the amount of stuff that was metal that was trash?
Well, we collected less than 1 bucket of metal, and the total weight of metal waste was 0.9 pounds, and all of our metal waste was aluminum foil.
Oh, it was aluminum, so you didn't have to worry about like steel cans. Nobody was leaving like their vegetable cans. Very cool. Let's go to our next image so the audience can see more of what you guys are doing. And it looks like you guys are actually counting things up. And you had sheets of paper that you needed to fill out, forms you needed to fill out. And so, Stephen, what did you learn in terms of paper waste? What kinds of paper waste did you find that you guys had?
We had 3 large buckets of paper, and it was 15.6 pounds and 78 pounds of paper per week and 3,740 pounds of paper per year.
Oh, my gosh. That is a lot of paper per year. Let's go to our next image where we're going to be able to see you guys getting on what I like to refer to, Clint, as the hazmat costumes that these kids are getting into. And we go to the next image, we'll see a couple of these coming up as we talk about this. The kids were actually going to wade into the waste, right?
Yes, this involved actually hands-on work, getting in and sorting the waste, and there's only one way to do that.
And there you go, a very happy Lions Club member enjoying his time in the waste product. Did you guys look for glass? Did you find any glass?
We collected no glass from the waste audit. But the students solved the problem by helping out other students with collecting like paper or plastic.
Good. And you found some plastic stuff? Did you find some plastic stuff?
Yes, we found 1.4 pounds of plastic, and the amount of plastic we use per week is 47 pounds, and the amount of plastic we use per year is 2,256 pounds.
Oh, wow. So you guys found a lot. And again, here, of course, is the entire group. Some of us still in our gear, and some of us happily maybe not in our gear because they didn't have to deal with wading through the waste. Now, you also looked up some ideas about organic material?
Yeah,
what did we find out?
We found, we collected 2 bags and 1 bucket, and one of the bags was placed in the dumpster during lunch, so we had to estimate its weight based on the weight of the remaining bag.
Oh, very cool. Now, I know you guys are going to be doing some more with your project, and we're going to talk about that a little later in the program. But Layla, why does Lions Club matter to you? Why do you choose to get involved? Why is the environment important to you?
I love the environment, and it's good to help the community and have a clean one too.
Very cool. And Stephen, why are you involved?
Because I could help the environment and not have a nasty environment.
Very good. Thanks so much. I'll let you guys sit down and relax for a while as we go through our
good.
program this hour. And don't forget, other kids from Flint Park, if you've got questions during the program, just wave your hands, and I'll have you guys come over and talk about it. Gary, we left the conversation talking about the amount of waste that gets produced and the numbers that you heard there from the kids.
Right.
Talk a little bit about this big picture and compare it to like people, bringing their stuff. Just like Katie Mike said, it's all in my own trash can.
Right. Once it's collected from the curb or from the community, it comes to resource management where it is then separated. On a daily basis, we see 350 tons a day locally in the St. Louis area. That's about 4,200 trees a day that is saved through recycling. And the other side of that is if it wasn't being recycled into a marketable, sustainable product, it would have been going to the landfill.
Oh, that's right. And I remember as a kid, okay, yes, everybody growing up as a kid was a long time ago, the late 1950s, early 1960s. I grew up in a town that was about 20,000 people, and we actually went to the city dump and, were able to put stuff in the city dump. Does that still happen, Katie Mike? Can I actually go to a city dump and do that, or does all the stuff only happen through companies now?
Well, most of it does happen through an actual waste hauler. Everybody's seen the garbage truck that comes and picks up their trash. But what would be interesting, if you wanted to go to a landfill yourself, you would pay the same fee, probably the same cost as what a dump truck would pay. So we're talking a fee per ton. And Gary, you use that term ton. How many pounds is a ton? Let's put that into picture.
2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds. All right, that's a lot. That's a lot of trash.
We're starting to get email questions in. Don't forget, it's live at hectv.org. And Bill, I'll turn this one over to you. Recycling is something you hear about a lot, it seems like. So why do you think people still throw away paper instead of recycling it? What's the barrier? What makes it difficult to get people involved?
Part of it could be access. We are a society where we want things to be as easy as possible. So part of it could be access. Another part could be they don't know what's available to them. And part of it may be that they're just downright lazy.
Okay.
But there should be, in this day and age, in most metropolitan areas in the United States, particularly with fiber, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, those opportunities are there. And I think part of the problem we talked about previously is going back into the late 80s and early 90s when we were recycling, but it was all going to the landfill. And we haven't recovered from that mental part of that we need to get over, because what does get recovered is being recycled and reused.
And we've talked about a couple of important terms. We've mentioned recycling, and Katie Mike, you mentioned sustainability as well. And we've got an email question from Helen, thank you, Helen, asking for the difference between recycling and sustainability, like is one a subset of another. And I know we've got a PowerPoint slide that you provided us, which actually gives the definition of sustainability that we'll bring up as you talk about this. So talk a little bit about what is sustainability and how recycling fits into that.
So recycling is one practice that gets us to this end goal of sustainability. And sustainability as a goal is a journey. It's not one destination point. You're never going to get there completely 100%. So the definition that we use is pretty commonly accepted by the UN Commission that put it forth back in the early 90s, meeting the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So to put that into my own words, I would say it's really similar to sharing. And students have learned that since, preschool? Come on, it's an easy concept. We all know it's important to share. And the thing with sustainability, though, is we're talking about sharing natural resources, and we're talking about sharing with people we don't even know yet, because in future generations, we have no idea who those people will be. We have no idea who our grandkids or great-grandkids or great-great-great-grandkids will be.
Very good. Now, Bill's on the board of the Missouri Recycling Association. He comes to it from one perspective. Katie Mike obviously works at Earthways Center, Missouri Botanical Garden. She comes at it from another perspective. Resource Management is a for-profit company that has obviously figured out that there's money to be made in this big picture of trash that we're looking at to some extent. Let's talk a little bit about that big picture of economics. What have you noticed, and how long has the company been in existence, and what have you noticed over time?
Resource Management's been in business since 1991. Developing some very basic technology that kind of leads us into a forefront. the sustainability is based on several things. The ability to separate and make the material into a marketable product, but without a market and a marketplace, then there is no sustainability. But in coming together with the collections, from the waste industry, coming together with the processing through the MRF, material recycling facility, and then reaching out to global markets, gives us the ability to take and turn trash into cash.
Very cool. Now, let's talk a little bit as we get to the big picture here before we go into like what it actually means to recycle and how we do that, what happens to the trash, because we've gotten a lot of email questions about that. Fear not, we will get to that. Are there certain products that you're thinking, like for example, I look at this plastic bottle, we've all got them here, we've been drinking. This says please recycle.
Yes.
So this is one of those nice little plastic water bottles that I can put. Does the lid also get recycled? Is all elements of this plastic bottle potentially recyclable?
Put the lid back on after it's empty and put it in your recycling cart or container. And the whole bottle, you know, the lid and the bottle itself gets recycled through a granulation and a flotation process. The cap most likely will be an aggregate for lumber.
Okay.
And in the bottle itself, there's many different varieties of uses for.
Very cool. And Katie, Mike, I'm seeing you're drinking from obviously a container you're reusing as opposed to going. Talk a little bit about the importance of that.
Sure. So earlier I mentioned that recycling was one step to get us closer to this goal of sustainability. Reusing is another step as well that will get us closer. And, you know, there definitely is a waste hierarchy that the reduce, reuse, recycle. Students have heard that many, many times. There's even a dance that goes with it that I will not do on TV.
Oh, Katie, Mike. Perhaps later, folks, we can encourage her to do so.
But the order is important. Reduce comes first. And so why even use a plastic water bottle if you don't need it? If you could find for example, drink from a water fountain, then there's no need for a container whatsoever. Or then you could reuse. And so we follow that order in particular.
And Bill, you've got in front of you an aluminum can, and we had some good conversation in the morning. That aluminum can can be recycled over and over and over and over again, is that correct?
Yes. Once an aluminum can, as long as it's put into the recycling stream, it will forever be an aluminum can. And if this can was recycled today, within about 60 days it would be back on the shelf as a new aluminum can with another beverage. And
it's important that we think about that because, Gary, there's a limited amount of bauxite ore in the world, and bauxite is what creates aluminum, right? What we use to create aluminum.
That's correct. It takes 4.4 tons of bauxite to make a ton of aluminum.
Oh, wow.
We're only able to generate less than 1% of our bauxite needs in the U.S. The rest of it is all imported from other areas, and of course, that
creates other dilemmas for us, or other potential political problems, and that's of course a conversation for another program.
Very good.
About sustainability in a different way. Oh, great! Here's a question that came in via email. What are some items that people would actually be surprised to find out are recyclable? Harry wants to know. Bill, what comes to your mind when you first hear that question? Oh, people don't think about.
The one that I always bring up is aluminum foil. Another one with the holidays approaching and the aluminum roasting pans that people use for turkeys and whatnot. Those are all recoverable as well.
Oh.
So most of those, unfortunately, will end up being trashed, and they should not. They should be rinsed and put into the single stream recovery program.
Oh, very good. And when you hear that question, Katie, Mike, what pops to your head?
I would say the milk cartons, because so many people assume that because it's waxy coating that it cannot be recycled because we're mixing a plastic with a paper. But indeed they can be. And if a school is throwing away up to 75,000 of those a year, it's definitely in their best interest to keep that out of the dumpster.
And Gary?
Well, this time of year, Bill brought up a very interesting fact that during the up-and-coming Christmas season, volume of recycling cranks up 30%. Some of the things that people wonder about is Christmas wrap. It is, definitely. One of the most common, though, that is overlooked is the aseptic packaging, gable top cartons, such as the Minute Maid orange juice,
like a juice
or the little juicy box, juicy juice box kind of a thing. People overlook that. Only because their perception, it doesn't look as recyclable as something that has been educated thoroughly as an aluminum can or or newspaper, something like that.
Well, let's start to talk about that recycling process, because we've gotten a lot of questions, including this one that came to us from Bob about, what happens in that process. And so we had the opportunity to go to a facility of yours, and we've got some video that we're going to run as we talk about that. And it begins actually at a recycling facility in Kirkwood, Missouri, where people can just drop their things off.
That's right. This is Kirkwood, Missouri. Recently, in January, we converted that from a self-sort to a single stream facility where everything can go in together. The truck then comes to our facility, weighs. The truck then pulls into the facility and dumps its product on the floor. You can notice it's all mixed together, and now it's our job to separate and create individual products from a multiple base single stream material. That material has any paper that you can tear, as well as plastic, aluminum, steel, and glass containers. The first process that happens is a pre-sort, where they are looking for non-recyclable items. Many people are afraid to recycle, afraid they'll make a mistake. We fix the mistake at the very beginning. That material then is processed through automation, sent through, and then is visually checked to make sure that the material is of the highest quality for the manufacturer, which again attaches to sustainability. The value of the product is connected to the quality of the material and the volume of the material collected.
Now, the material I see there, and it may just be what we saw in this moment in time in the footage, most of it appears to be paper product. Is that true for most of what you get? Is most of your stuff is paper as opposed to plastic product?
In a typical 2,000 pound or a ton, 70% of that ton is newspaper.
Okay.
The 30% is containers. And well, I say paper is 70%, newspaper represents 55 to 60% of that overall newspaper, as well as glass represents 60% of the 30% of containers.
Now, in terms of these bales here, what are we seeing and where are they going?
We're seeing 1,500 pound bales being loaded onto trucks and going to market. Those markets are as close as locally and domestic markets, and near us are, in the case of that truck, it is heading to an overseas market. That's an overseas container which will be loaded on a ship and sent into the Asian market.
So then someone somewhere is actually getting that big bale of paper.
That's correct.
And they're going to take that bale of paper and use it to make something else?
That's correct. Paper can be recycled as many times, 15 times, to be remanufactured into a different product.
So if I get if I pick up a notebook at some sort of dime store or whatever the case would be, a big box discount store, who will remain nameless, and it says made totally out of 100% recycled paper, that kind of thing.
Right.
I can continue to recycle that?
Yes. One of the papers that recycles over and over again is corrugated boxes.
Okay.
The cardboard just continually is being recycled back into cardboard.
Very cool, very cool. And Katie, Mike, as we look at that process, it's not just the fact that it's happening on the big scale like that. It's also a similar process would happen if I'm putting the curbside stuff out at on my street.
That's correct. Eventually, it will make its way to a facility like Gary's and become a new product. And you mentioned earlier that you might be looking for a notebook at that dime store, and this would be the logo to look for, so you would know that it's made from recycled content. Now note, students, that there's a difference here between this logo and this one. This means something different, that it can possibly be recycled, but it's on you to put it in the recycling bin. This one means it came from your recycling bin, and it's just as important for you to use both logos and buy recycled content items. So it continues to keep a market for Gary.
That's right.
Oh, very cool. Right. And as we look at that process, Bill, do you notice over the course of your time with the Missouri Recycling Association, is it become kind of like the automatic thing for local governments to do now that they're going to provide this kind of stuff, or is that still something that's kind of unique or rare?
I can't say it's automatic, but
Okay.
it's growing.
Okay.
The amount of recovered material in the state is growing quite well. We did pass a piece of legislation many years ago setting a goal of 40% recovery for the state, and we are at near that or surpassed it. but there are still a lot of infrastructure issues in the rural areas of Missouri to help meet the needs to recover these products.
We'd actually gotten an email question about legislation, and is this something that has been legislated or needs to be legislated more to have people, be more likely to recycle?
I don't know that legislation necessarily has to be the answer. It's going to be the economics that will drive it, and we as consumers have to be very conscious about our purchases, as Katie was saying earlier, looking for that recycled logo. You can divert all you want out of the landfill into a recycling market, but if it's not producing a product that people are willing to use and purchase, then the end game is not being met. So the economics will drive it. The St. Louis County did pass an ordinance requiring the waste haulers to provide recycling services. When that happened, our recycling rates jumped immediately to 40–45%, and now, Gary, I think we're up around 55% or so. So it has helped tremendously with that particular ordinance in the St. Louis County area, but I don't know if a statewide piece of legislation is going to do the trick when you don't have the infrastructure in the outstate areas of Missouri to provide the assistance that would be needed.
Now, when we think about recycling, and there's all sorts of products that are being created, and I know you brought some examples. So let's talk a little bit about those products that get created. First of all, Gary, let's go through a little demonstration you're going to give us about how the plastic is separated, and then I want Katie Might to give us some examples of the wide variety of products that actually are created potentially out of recycled material.
Right. On this morning, we take a quick look. We realize that what is recyclable? Somebody says, I'm not sure what is recyclable. From a paper standpoint, that's the answer. If it will tear and it's not, if there is no food waste or bodily waste contamination, put it in your recycling bin or cart. The next thing is we look at the most recyclable product there is in America, and it's the aluminum can. Like Bill said, put it in your cart. It's going to return in 60 days. The other neat thing about it is there's a job attached to the end of it. To every recyclable item, there's a job attached. There's jobs made, manufactured. The aluminum can is going to come back as aluminum can. Steel can come back most likely as a steel can, but it's going to come back as steel. It could be a car part. It actually could be a part of your refrigerator. But it will return. 0.5% loss by recycling steel. Versus ore, which takes 2.5 tons of rock to make 1 ton of ore.
Oh, wow. Definitely worth it.
Then, of course, aerosol in the St. Louis region is recyclable. Glass, 65% energy savings in glass. Oh, wow. Glass is very recyclable in the St. Louis region. Some areas a little more remote, it becomes an issue. But locally, we're very lucky to have that. From a recycling standpoint and what it will be made into, of course, we cannot put beverage back into a food or beverage container. The container is, according to FDA, is not approved for that.
That's the Food and Drug Administration, if you don't recognize
FDA,
that.
Food and Drug Administration. So what happens to our, from the St. Louis area, from most areas, is the plastic goes to a manufacturing which makes these little flakes. These flakes are then put into a water bath where flotation, it cleans and prepares them. Then they are sent to another portion after the flakes dry to be made into what looks like cotton, but has a texture more of a polyester.
It feels very much like carpet to me.
Exactly. Carpeting is what over 50% of the carpet today in the U.S. is made from your drink bottle.
Oh, wow. That's very cool to know. Katie, Mike, you had a different example you were going to bring up?
Right. So I was thinking about how some products are very clearly and obviously made out of another product, whereas carpet, right, you don't know that, oftentimes you don't know that that's made out of recycled plastic bottles. And so you might find things, in fact, like here's a different pencil pouch that is indeed made out of recycled plastic, but it's not just quite as obvious as this one here, which is clearly Capri Sun.
Exactly, Capri Sun has obviously done that.
Yeah, and this actually I bet a student could probably make this themselves if we're had the skills of to use a sewing machine. But this particular pencil pouch was made by a company called TerraCycle, and they actually will collect the drink pouches as well as granola bar wrappers and Ziploc bags and some of those harder to recycle things, and make them into useful products like this that are actually pretty cool. Like, this is cool, guys, right? Yeah.
Heads are nodding.
So,
Heads are nodding.
yes.
Even if you're not seeing the kids at that moment in time, heads are nodding. We've got a question that came to us from Point Elementary, who's watching via the web, Bill. I'll start it out with you, and then anybody else can talk about it. Do you think it's worthwhile to actually go into old landfills to recover glass, cans, aluminum, etc.? Do people attempt to do that?
It has been attempted, I believe, in the Northeast. It has not been attempted in the state of Missouri. And the economic viability of it, I can't respond to that accurately. I don't know what the answer to that would be right now. But it wouldn't surprise me, as resources, particularly metals, become more scarce, that is an option that's going to have to be explored somewhere down the road.
And I have heard about landfills, the methane gas source being utilized. Talk a little bit about that, Katie, Mike.
Sure. Methane is one of the byproducts of decomposition in an anaerobic setting. So if you were to throw
anaerobic meaning?
Meaning without oxygen. I was getting there. So if you were to throw an apple core outside onto the ground, it would be an aerobic setting because it's outside, exposed to air. Where inside a landfill, it's not exposed to air because it's being covered up every day with at least 6 inches of soil or a big plastic cover or something like that. And not only is it not exposed to air, but it's not exposed to sunlight. All those good decomposer buggies that break that stuff down, so it's probably not going to break down. But methane gas will be produced. Some people say that methane gas could be an alternative energy source, and we could use that to heat and power buildings.
Yeah.
And in St. Louis, we have a really good example of a partnership between a landfill and a high school that do just that. But I think the question also gets back to why mine landfills if we can just avoid a landfill in the first place.
And don't forget, you can email your questions during the program. I'm going to come back here to Cecilia, who I met in the first program. You've got a question?
Yes.
What is it?
When you work at your recycling, can money be recycled? Like, because it's a type of paper, so can it be recycled too?
The U.S. Mint would be very happy to give you the right answer for that. Gary?
You're exactly right, and we recycle money all the time. But you know what? Whose money we're recycling? Yours. You get birthday cards, and when you get birthday cards and you get excited and you scream, "I got $10 from Grandma," and then you throw the card down without taking the money out. We've got a guy named Steve that normally finds that money. So make sure you take your money out and recycle it, reuse your money, and not leave it in your card. But it's funny the way that happens.
And actually, the U.S. Mint, who creates our money, prints our money, actually do take bills out of circulation, and some of that is recycled, and some of that is just incinerated at times, too, depending upon how old it is, how ugly it is, that kind of thing. Good question, Cecilia. Thanks very much. Talking about recycling, let's move away. Well, it's not too far away from paper, I guess, but let's move away from like these big bales of paper and aluminum, and let's talk about something I could do actually in my yard, perhaps, because we definitely want to talk a little bit about composting. So, Katie, Mike, I know you've brought us a jar of compost.
Right, back to aerobic.
And I'm sorry we don't have smell-o-vision here, people, but smell-o-vision is not available for this moment in time.
And it doesn't smell.
It doesn't
No, it
smell. I think
does
that's one of the things that
not.
people would be surprised by to a large extent.
Right.
It isn't a stinky habit to
It
compost.
is not at all. Whereas methane gas, a different decomposition process. Remember, that's the one without oxygen, so that is stinky. Methane gas is stinky, but this good stuff right here, this black gold, is straight from my compost pile at home. So this might have been, my pizza crust. This might have been some banana peels, the apple cores, pumpkin rind, all of those kinds of things that I wouldn't actually eat, and threw them outside into my compost pile. And look who has started to work on eating them. And I'm wondering if we might see some creepy crawlies somewhere around here.
Do you think you've got a few little
Oh, I'm certain of it.
little bugs in there that are doing
So
their thing?
If there are any escapees in the library later, I apologize.
We'll let the librarian
Yeah.
know that she might need to be stamping
Yeah.
out.
So This is one simple thing, and people ask about how recycling and composting fits into the bigger picture of sustainability. Well, that methane gas there produced at the landfill is a greenhouse gas. And the more organic material, the more things like banana peels and apple cores you put into a landfill, the more methane gas you produce, the more greenhouse gases you produce. Carbon dioxide is also produced as well, another greenhouse gas. So by simply keeping those organics out by composting, you could in fact reduce our greenhouse gases. And I mean, you know what would happen if you were to throw that outside on the ground. So composting is kind of an accelerated method of helping nature out a little bit more. And if you don't have a lot of ground to throw onto or a place to build an outdoor compost pile, there are indoor methods as well.
So like I can buy a barrel or something so I can compost inside?
Sure thing.
And I could use that to plant my house plants or to fertilize my house plants?
Indeed. So speaking of escapees, it would be keeping worms, actually. The little creepy crawly red wigglers indoors that could compost your food scraps. Now, worms are vegetarian, so
I've got to be careful about that.
Yes.
So are there certain things that compost better, more easily, some things that take longer to break down? Like if I'm really interested in it, should I avoid, I don't know, pineapples versus, you know, apple cores?
Well, eggshells, for example, are really dense and good source of calcium. If fed to worms, though, it's going to take the worm a little bit longer to get through that, as you can imagine. So breaking those up is a good idea, and not putting too many of them in also. And then you have to monitor it as well. If you're adding a lot of citrus, that's an acid, right? Citric acid. So that could influence the pH balance of your compost pile as well. And that would make for a great science experiment for some students to take on which materials break down faster and which never break down, and how to speed up that process.
Sarah, thank you for your email question. Sarah asks, can leftover bread or burgers be recycled and composted?
Bread, most definitely.
Okay.
Burgers, here we're getting into the meat issue, and meat breaks down differently than plant material. So it depends on the composting system that you have. If you have a particular system like a bokashi bin, or one that uses a really high heat source, like a nature mill as an example, then perhaps you could do meat, but you want to be really careful either way because it just takes a different kind of decomposer. Now, if you're sending your compostables away to be composted off-site, which is an option for schools, of course, you that's a whole different scale. They're doing things on their compost piles are so huge that it doesn't matter necessarily if it's meat or not.
And do you see, Bill, or more like, I know that in the city of St. Louis, for example, there's city parks where I can go and get mulched material because they've done the whole chips from the trees. And do you see more cities doing this kind of thing? Has that increased?
Yes, it has, especially since we did pass the ban on yard waste material going to the landfills. But there are also restaurants and school districts that have started composting programs on site, maybe at the individual school, or it may be at a central location for that school district, but there are more and more of them all the time.
And are there certain things, Gary, that are recyclable but they can't come to you because of their nature? Like we had an email question about medical waste, latex gloves, that kind of thing.
Right, that's true. But one of the things that are truly recyclable that kind of clogs our system up is bags. You go to the grocery, you get the plastic bags, and people want to recycle the bags. Part of the problem is our equipment is fully automated, and we have spinning wheels and gears, and they just bind everything up. So we cannot accept them. But should you take this bag and put it back to wherever this came from, drop it in usually there's a box at the door, that's going to come back as a composite decking. It's made by Trex.
Okay, like the plastic decking as opposed to wood decking for my backyard.
That's correct. That's correct. Lasts 8 times as long. Costs about twice to 3 times as much. But
that's good.
Overall, sustainability at its best.
And I could obviously choose just to reuse that bag.
And
I can put it in my trash can. I could talk. Yeah, Katie, Mike.
So we have the typical option here: paper or plastic. And if we're getting to true sustainability, the option is neither, right? Perhaps it's bringing your own bag. So this is sometimes difficult to remember. So maybe this is a good task for shopping helpers. Students, tell your mom to put them in the car, right? And I've noticed some grocery stores are even starting to paint it on their sidewalks, right? Did you remember your bag? So as you leave the parking spot to walk into the store, it reminds you.
And I wish. Go ahead, Bill.
These things don't rip and break like those do.
Right. No.
You don't have the disasters in the parking lot with
No, those cloth bags are great. I nearly had a disaster with another one, but luckily the other side held well enough that I didn't have to like lose all of my groceries in the parking lot. But I wish that the grocery store I went to frequently had that, because more than once I've had to go back to my car trunk and pick that bag back up. Once it'd been there. We had some more email questions coming in because I just heard that nice little sound again. So I'll go right. Oh, ha 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 ha. Which is better, paper or plastic? Well, is there one from a recycling perspective? Does it really matter? Like, am I more likely to get great stuff out of because I recycle paper than plastic? Is one more marketable than the other?
In today's market, not so much. But you know, the paper is, of course, much easier, and the marketplace has been there much longer than the plastic. So I say from a market standpoint, longevity at this point, the paper over plastic. From the truck side of things, they're very happy to take those plastic bags. But, you know, I'm like you guys, I pack everything on mine. But my wife does the same thing. She says, I forgot my bag at home. What if they just had returnables? You know, I mean, something to take all with.
Yeah, you know, just leave the bag there for others to use.
Right.
That reminds me of a conversation we had this morning about glass bottles, because we were talking about the fact that I remember growing up in a small town of about 20,000 in Kansas. I could go and take my soda bottles back to the grocery store and get money back from the glass recycling. And there are some states that have deposit laws, both for glass and for aluminum. Bill, how does Missouri relate to that? And why do you think some states do some things, some states don't? Is it really economically feasible? Are we better off doing something besides taking the glass back to get my 5 or 10 cents?
Well, first of all, in Missouri, we do not have a bottle. We do not have a deposit law that impacts us. They can work. They do work, but they're not necessarily the best answer. As we talked about previously, for that to happen, the stores that have to accept those items have to build new infrastructure to hold all of those. It's best, I think, in my personal opinion, that if you have a single stream recovery program, that makes it easier on everyone. But that program has to be accessible, it has to be broad, and you have to have a resource management or another MRF there that's going to be able to take those materials and sort and process them.
And remind people what MRFs are again?
Material recovery facilities.
And that's exactly what you are right here, a
That's
material
it. That's
recovery
who we are.
facility. Now, the Earthways Center at Missouri Botanical Garden, which is focused entirely on a sustainable environment, looks at a whole variety of areas, right, Katie, Mike?
We do indeed. So we might also be talking about energy as a means to getting to sustainability. But it all comes, so energy, we could also be talking about indoor air quality as a sustainability initiative that a school could take on, for example, switching to green cleaners. But whatever our topic is, we're still getting back to the natural resource. Where did these things come from? So if we're looking at the choice between paper and plastic, it comes back down to where did these things come from and how do we continue to value them. So if you look at what this actually came from, it did not come from probably any place here in Missouri, because we don't mine a whole lot of oil here in Missouri, whereas we do have some forests. So it might be an issue of locality as well, which is another important tenet of sustainability is staying local, which I think it's great that we have some really valuable local resources to have such a great market here for recyclables. For example, we can recycle all different colors of glass that, well, for almost all of them, that many cities cannot because of our locality.
Right. That's right. We can't do blue in the St. Louis region, but we can do green and amber and clear, obviously.
That's correct.
Very good. Because I still see people in their gardens with the blue bottled little garden trees or whatever to call them. So they're doing something with reusing that. We want to spend a little bit of time, of course, on strategies about what you can do, and that's how we're going to end our program today. And to start that, we're going to go back to our wonderful students here at Flint Park Elementary so that Layla and Stephen can talk a little bit about what their plans are. So, guys, I'll have you join me up here again. Looking good, looking good, looking good. So now, Layla, what's the next step? You guys have found out a lot of information, and you're going to do what?
Next, we're going to plan to launch our awareness campaign on America's Recycles Day on November 15th, and we're going to expand our recycling bins.
Very cool. And what is your campaign all about, Stephen? What are you hoping that people will do?
Start recycling more, and that's all.
Are you going to put up posters? What kinds of things are you going to do for your campaign?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Posters will probably be part of it, but you want people to recycle more and more often. Talk a little bit about America's Recycle Day. That's November 15th, did you say?
Yeah, it's just we're campaigning about recycling and what we could do in the community to make our community more cleaner and to recycle.
There are a lot of projects online. America's Recycle Day has a website that's actually part of the materials that we put online in relationship to this program. So you guys can go to the website, americarecycles.org, maybe if I'm remembering right, find out about America Recycling Day and see what projects are going on in your community, because there's all sorts of things happening on November 15th. Thanks to both of you very much. I'll let you guys sit over there and relax. And let's begin to talk a little bit then about other steps that people can take and recycles. And so, Katie, Mike, I know you brought a whole variety of examples because we've talked about recycling on massive scale, and I want to get back to some city-oriented stuff as we talk to Gary again. But you've also got some things very individually that people can think about as they talk about reusing.
And I want to build on what the student was saying, that with America Recycles Day, one of the most important tools and things that people can do is to talk, right? So using your voice as a tool to spread the word. So we mentioned painting the parking lots or getting the word out. Well, doing that involves verbal as well as visual cues. So if we can just spend some time talking about the issue, I think really makes a difference. We can also use not only our voice, but our creativity. So our creativity is for sure a definite tool. So here what I have is an example of an artist that has created a chicken out of plastic shopping bags. So taking something that could have been considered trash and moving it into an art form, almost artwork.
So art teachers can be doing all sorts of projects
most definitely.
Reuse materials.
In fact, one of the art projects I worked with some students on, they actually made this hat here crocheted out of shopping bags as well. So we have a cute little hat here. Very stylish, and there's a dress actually that matches where the student had made her prom dress, or she was hoping it would be a prom dress. Plastic is actually pretty hot.
Yes, I was going to say,
not very
it doesn't
appropriate
breathe, as they say. It doesn't breathe.
No, not good.
No, it's not the fabric of our lives.
So a few other creative examples of reuse gets back to the gable tops that Gary was talking about, and milk cartons. There are so many of them on school grounds. Well, look at this creative example of reuse. Very simply, the student has decorated the outside of the milk carton, and we just put some Velcro there on the flaps, and now we have a snack box. So
Very
it's
cool.
rethinking this item, and so no longer does it become trash, no longer does it become a recyclable, it becomes something reusable and valuable. And here's a similar example, another snack box made out of, same Velcro, right? Made out of a milk carton, right? It's still pretty durable, it's still waterproof, and that's what really we're encouraging students and everyone to think about, the properties and characteristics, what made it good in the first place, and how can we continue to keep it good. And actually, that's what the market is asking for too. You know, if plastic has a certain property, well, what can we use those properties for in another item when it gets remade into?
That's a great thing to mention, because Gary was going to go to you and talk about that. Are you noticing, I mean, talk some examples about the wide diversity of products that since you began the company, that you begin to see, oh my gosh, we're doing this now and this now.
Sure. There's been so many things added in the recycling. One of the most unique, and for many years, aerosol was not included. Several years back, someone from the steel division of recycling approached the owner of Resource Management and Said, hey, Cal, what about aerosol? Nobody had really considered it. He says, okay, because there's nothing wrong and adverse with the aerosol. Sometimes it's a thought process. Sometimes it's a market that is not ready or fully evolved yet. The plastics markets have evolved recently and continue to evolve. Technology is involved. The separation of the materials today are separated totally through automation, machines, eddy currents that actually pull or reject the aluminum off of a belt, the magnets, the optic separators that actually chooses whether this is a soda bottle or a milk jug. I mean, actually, it's all done through technology. As the technology grows, not only in the recycling, but it's also growing in the market fields of manufacturing, better ways of manufacturing using recycled products. But the equity that is already there, this is one of my favorites.
I was hoping you're going to get to that term. What is the equity you're referring to?
We talk about product equity. You know, we buy a can of green beans. We take it for granted. But the equity is we've already mined the ore, 2.5 tons of the ore into 1 ton of iron. We've already made it and melted it into a steel, only to throw it away. That's their piggy bank we're throwing away. We're throwing away their future because, you know, product, we've already mined all of our bauxite out. Their future is diminished because of our practices. Equity is product equity. We've already paid to mine it, refine it, produce it. Why keep doing it over and over again and losing that equity?
Let's just get the most out of what we possibly can. We've already made an investment. Let's get the most out of that investment we possibly can.
We're talking about recycling money a while ago. $5 million a year of aluminum goes in St. Louis landfills.
Oh my gosh. I'd be happy to have a little bit of that income.
Well,
Katie, Mike?
absolutely.
So Gary uses the term equity different than I do, because when I talk about sustainability, we talk about the 3 E's, the environment, the economy, and equity in terms of social equity. So I think it's kind of important to clarify that he's talking about investments versus deposits as a banker would, that this is an investment that's already been made, so why make it again by mining new natural resources. When I talk about equity, I'm talking about more the human factor, which is just as important sometimes as the environmental factor. So I want to tie that back to something else that Gary's alluded to, which was the job creation. And that has been huge. There has been a study done by our solid waste management district several years ago that showed that recycling does mean business and it does mean jobs here in the St. Louis area.
16,000 in St. Louis.
And it's interesting you would mention that. That St. Louis estimate is 16,000.
That's St. Louis alone.
Well, according to the Clean Water Council, the Clean Air Council, pardon me, where I got this information, it's estimated that recycling, reuse, and composting creates 6 to 10 times as many jobs as waste incineration in landfills.
That's right.
Because you're dealing with jobs all along a production line, so to speak, both in terms of coming in as well as going out and products that are created. We've gotten some more email questions. So, Bill, I'll turn to this one because we all had a carry-out lunch today, and those carry-out lunches came in those lovely styrofoam containers. And Jenny wants to know, can you actually recycle styrofoam? If not, what can be done to get rid of it safely, or are we just stuck putting it in the trash can?
Well, first of all, I brought my lunch today in a reusable and returnable container.
Points for Bill. I like it.
That's right.
The right now, food contaminated styrofoam is not recoverable, and so we are basically stuck with it. There are ways, if you can find the right place, to take the big blocks of packing foam, but that's a hit and miss and a rarity. So styrofoam it's the number 6 plastic and is pretty much not a part of any recovery stream here or anywhere else in the United States.
But we'll get
Your
there
choices are right now is to demand a different type of packaging rather than that. What those options might be may or may not be any better. It's one of the societal issues that we struggle with.
Well, I've gotten some carry out from places that it's more like the egg carton cardboard, for lack of a better thing to call it. That's recyclable, I'm assuming.
As long as it's not heavily soiled with oil or other food contaminants.
And is that why I get told on the little sign when I go to Kirkwood Recycling Center or someplace else like that, that my peanut butter jar should not be recycled. My plastic peanut butter jar, they say avoid that. Is that because it's a food contaminant, or is that no longer true?
They should be. It's better if they're rinsed, but I'm not familiar with the Kirkwood issue with.
No, it's not. I don't know if it was Kirkwood or another location where I found it, but I've seen the sign at different places.
They should be rinsed.
Okay, very good. Well, good, because I do. I want to remember that all the time. We've only got a few minutes left in the program. We want to make sure that each of our guests has an opportunity to give you some final thoughts and talk about anything that we haven't addressed today that they wanted to mention. So, Bill, let's start with you.
Well, I would just encourage people to do what they can as an individual when it comes to reducing, reusing, recovery, and recycling. You may not solve the world's problems, but as an individual, you can do your part in the St. Louis area. It's not difficult at all. We have a very comprehensive program in the area that can take just about anything these days outside of number 6. So be a participant. Be very conscious of your purchases. Make sure it has recycled content, because as we've talked about before, you can divert that from the landfill, but if you're not creating something that somebody is going to use, then you haven't really solved the problem and you haven't provided the economics to make it work.
And Katie, Mike?
I would say I would encourage everyone to think resource, not trash. To think of these items as what they could become, as what they used to be, and then really rethink that decision to throw it into the garbage can, because there's probably a better alternative. It may take a little creativity, but it still probably could be rethought and redone and recycled.
Oh, look, we've got, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to catch them or not, but indeed there are some nice bugs in Katie Mike's compost. They look suspiciously like ants to me. And so we'll do our very best job. I hear my producer in my ear giving me the ooh, ooh, ooh sign at this moment in time. I promise, Jackie, we will not bring the ants toward you. But remember, that's good stuff. This is good stuff. You want those ants in there.
Yep, nature works in mysterious ways, but sometimes that's the point of science class, right? We learn what nature is in fact doing, and it applies to everything in our lives, that we work in cycles, right? So our banana peel doesn't just go away.
Exactly.
Nature will take care of it if we provide it with the tools.
And so far the ants are happily staying on the table.
Yes.
Gary, we've got about 30 seconds left. What would you like to say at the end to the students?
It's all carbon. But what I'd like to say is, as so many people are trying to make decisions on recycling based off old fears. You know, what happens, as so many of them are saying that if I recycle and make a mistake, I'll get in trouble. No, you can't do anything well unless you make the attempt. And education is a source. We'll try to keep you as informed as possible through opportunities like this. But we're just glad to be here and be part of the education process today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gary. I want to thank all of you for joining us today's program. Obviously, the Lions Club from Flint Park Elementary School. Thank you very much for being here, University City. Next week on Veterans Day, we'll be showing you the State Veterans Day service and meeting veterans, talking about their stories. Bye, everybody.